Hi, everybody. Welcome to Shivers. Today we have a guest. We're joined by David. David is a member of our Shivers meetup group. Come to our book club, our movie nights, a whole bunch of fun stuff. So, David, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So,
Um,
do you want to give us a little bit about your background, what you believe in, what also sort of brought you to Shivers in the first place?
sure. So, what brought me to Shivers in the first place was I had moved to Pennsylvania about 10, 15 years ago from Massachusetts, where I grew up in New England my whole life. And so I was looking to get involved with groups who are like-minded, and horror was one of the things that I really enjoyed. And I went on Meetup to kind of just search and found you guys and seemed like a great group. And it has been a great group. I've really enjoyed it. The interactions have been fantastic. Uh, as far as myself, like I said, I grew up in New England. So um, spirituality is really big in New England because it's an old area. Been to Salem multiple times. I grew up in an Irish Catholic family, and my mom was, I won't say that she was huge into ghosts and things, but she definitely believed that there was a connection. And she didn't foster it to her children, but she didn't shy away from it either. So she would definitely tell us stories about things that happened to her. Um, and we would get a kick out of it because we thought it was, cool when we were young. But I never was one who believed that I was in touch with, the spirit world or was empathetic. And I went to school and got a degree in chemical engineering. So science has always been very important to me and big part of my life. So it was one of those things that kind of contradicted the spiritual world because I couldn't prove it from a science perspective. So yeah, it's a little bit about me.
I love it. Yeah. I also grew up Catholic. And so I talk about that a lot of like the difference of religion and even still growing up religious, but believing in ghosts and liking crystals, and liking psychics and all that stuff. A lot of people think it's like one way or the other. Like there's absolutely a blend of both for sure. So, in terms of sort of some of your ghostly experiences, I know that you have a short story that you really want to share with us. So, floor is yours.
Oh, okay. So about 5 years ago, my in-laws came in for a visit, and they came in on the weekend that DC Comics was doing their virtual Comic Con. And I'm definitely a nerd, and I was super excited about it because there was rumors that the new Batman trailer was going to drop during it, which is the one that had Robert Patterson in it. And I was heard so much about it. I wanted to see it, but with my in-laws being there, I couldn't spend all day online waiting for it to drop. So uh, that following Monday, when my mother-in-law had gone to bed and my father-in-law was entertained watching Monday Night Football, I went online and watched it. And once I watch one trailer, I get sucked into watching 100 trailers. I love watching trailers. It's like I won't say it's my favorite part of a movie, but I definitely have to get to the movies before the trailers start
Mhm.
because it to me it's just so fun to see what's coming. And at the time, I was not good with horror, so I had never really watched scary movies. I didn't read horror novels. And so the trailer for Black Phone came on, and I watched it. And at the end of that, I was like, I'm done. I'm like, that's it. That was enough to freak me out, and I'm like, I'm gonna go to bed. So I did, and I typically read before going to bed. And at the time, I was reading a book called The Empire of the Sun, which was the story of the rise and fall of the Apache Nation at the mid to late 1800s after the Civil War. And the chapter that I was reading talked about there was a fort that was built, and the family that was living there decided that they were going to go off and build their own homestead, despite warnings that it was land that they're not supposed to build on. But they did it anyway. And the Apache eventually came and they burned the house down. They killed the family except for the wife. They took her captive, which was something that they typically did during that time. And she does become a central point in the story later on, but they were describing, everything about her, how she was dressed, and like those long flowing skirts and the frilly, lacy blouses. So, I don't know why that stuck with me, but I finished the chapter and turned the light off and went to bed. About 3 o'clock in the morning, I started having a dream. And in my dream, I'm in my mother's house in the family room. There are no lights on except for we have a fire going in the fireplace, and the TV's on, and there's some sporting events on. And I'm on my laptop sitting on the couch. I've got my checklist next to me, and I'm doing work and I'm completing things. And every time I complete something, I check it off on my list, and that makes me really happy. I'm one of those who likes the idea of completing the list and getting that sense of satisfaction. And right in front of me are a sliding glass door that goes out to our backyard. And it was winter time, so there was snow on the ground. It was a full moon, so the light from the moon was reflecting off of the snow. So it kind of gave a nice bright uh, outside, so I could see pretty clearly. And I looked up and I happened to see uh, two or three guys I had gone to college with coming through the backyard. And I hadn't spoken to these individuals probably 35 years. So it was really strange to me that they were there. And they were making their way around the side of my house. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, they're going to go to the front door and ring the doorbell to try and scare me. So I'm going to run to the front door and scare them first. And so I did. And on my mom's front door, on either side, she has these floor to ceiling windows that are probably about 8 inches wide, and there's a lacy white curtain that comes down, and so you can kind of peek through it and see what's happening in front. And so I was peeking through, waiting for them to come around, and they never did. So I thought, well, maybe they thought better of it and decided not to do it. So I go back to the family room. I go back to doing my work and checking things off. And a few minutes later, I look up again and I see about a dozen teenagers walking through the backyard towards the house behind us, which has fenced in, and they have shovels. And I'm thinking, they're going to dig under the fence. That that can't be good. And so I'm wondering what's going to happen. And I see three or four of them turn around and start walking towards the side of my house. And I realize they're going to try and scare me. And so I immediately run to the door and I'm peeking out the window again. And we lived in a colonial house. So the second floor above the front entrance was my sister's old room and had a big window, and the light was on this time. And I could see the shadow of my cousin Chris holding a baby um, coming through the window. And at that time, I hadn't talked to my cousin Chris for about 10 years, and they didn't have a baby. So it was just, you know, thinking about it afterwards was kind of strange, but at the time it was just normal. And then at some point the light goes out and I realized that he had gotten the baby back to sleep. And right about that time, those kids come walking and start coming up the front steps to the door. So I open the door and jump out and scare them, and they run off giggling. And I close the door and lock it. And I'm all proud of myself. And I walk back to the family room and I start, working again and checking things off the list. And uh, I hear this commotion out front. So opposite the sliding glass doors, we have a door that goes out to the garage. And so I open that up and I clicked on the button that raises the garage door. And I noticed that our next door neighbor had their garage door open and lights on. And there was a tractor trailer backing up to it. And I remember thinking, this is a really odd time to get a delivery. It's like the middle of the night. But, didn't think anything more of it, closed the door. Um, Went back and started working again. And a few minutes later, I look up and I see the tractor trailer now backing into my backyard to park. And I look into the driver's cab and no one's driving it. And that to me was, I'm like, this isn't good. Like I started to feel a sense of uh, worry. So I ran to the garage door. I opened it. I clicked the garage door and watched it come down, closed the garage door, locked it. And the moment I turned the lock, right behind me, I heard this click. And at that point, I actually woke up and I sat straight up in bed. And in the far corner of my bedroom, where the door and the wall meet, there was a woman standing there. She was about my height, which is like 5'8", and she was wearing a like denimish skirt that went down to her, feet. She was wearing a white blouse that had frilly cuffs and a frilly neck. Um, she had blonde hair that went below her shoulders, but she had no face. Her face it's like somebody had erased the features and it was just pink skin, flat pink skin. And her arms were down in front of her, and her right hand was in her left hand, palms up. And I start screaming, "Who is she? What is that?" over and over again. My wife wakes up, and for the first like 2 or 3 seconds, she's, trying to piece together what's going on. And she's looking at me and she's looking where I'm pointing and looking at me. And she finally says, "David, there's no one there. There's no one there. It's okay. You're fine. There's no one there." And my continuing asking this questions of who is she? What is that? And her trying to console me goes on for about 30 seconds before she says, "Turn the light on." And for some reason, to me, that made sense. And so instead of turning the light on the nightstand, decided to turn the light on by the door, which meant I had to pass her. And so as I get towards her, I try to make myself as thin as possible, like, squeeze everything in, which for me is kind of difficult. And I get as close to the wall as I can, like barely a fingertip away from flicking the switch. And I finally flick the switch and she disappears. And I suddenly come back to myself. Um, I at the time I didn't feel like I was outside of myself. I just felt like I wasn't. All I could focus on was her, and I knew my wife didn't see her. I could hear my wife. It didn't bother me that she didn't see her. Um, I didn't question it at the time, but when the light went back on and she disappeared, I kind of felt like I came back to myself, and I'm sitting on the edge of the bed now, panting, trying to, get myself calm. And she's asking me what I saw, and I describe it to her. And so once I finish, she says, "Come back to bed." So I walk back, I turn the light on the nightstand, go back, turn the light off, the main light, because I was not going to not have the light on for some time. So for the next 2 hours, I laid there in bed, awake with the light on, trying to make sense of what happened. And finally, I started to see um, outside the window the sky lighten up. So I turned the nightstand light off, and finally fell back to sleep. Uh, so with my in-laws being in town, I had taken the week off to visit with them and go around with them. And that morning, I happened to be the last one up. So when I came out, my wife had already briefed them on what happened, and they said, "Oh, we heard you had a tough night." I'm like, "Yeah," and so I was telling them about that. And my wife is one of those that believes all the knowledge in the world is on the internet. So she is asking me a ton of questions. What did she look like? Describe it. And then the last question she asked me was, did she have an aura? And I was like, yeah, as a matter of fact, she did. And she said, what color is it? Or what color was it? And I said, it was, like blue, light blue, like a sky blue. She's like, okay. And she's like, well, she goes, based on this, she said, basically, this is a spirit that's come to you with a message. And if she reappears, what you should do is ask her, do you have something to tell me? Do you have a message for me? If you do, what is that message? And I had been making breakfast at the time, and I turned around and I looked at her and I said, you have got to be out of your mind if you think that, number one, I am going to be aware enough to remember that you've told me that I need to ask this question to her. And number two, if this really is a spirit from beyond the veil, I don't really know if I want to know what the message is because, what could they be coming to tell me that could possibly be good? I 99% of it myself believe that it's going to be bad. So why even ask? Um, but since then, it's never happened again. She's never come back. So it's kind of like when somebody calls and doesn't leave a message, if it was important enough, she'd, come back and tell me. So maybe it wasn't that big a deal. But later that week, I actually had an appointment with my therapist, and I was telling her about the dream at the end of it. And she said, well, she goes, first of all, I'm a psychologist, and we don't really study dreams. But there is a medical condition that happens sometimes to people where they wake up from a dream and one side of their brain still believes it's in the dream and one side of your brain knows you're awake, but it confuses the two, so you don't really know which is which. And so I thought about that afterwards, and the only thing I could think of was, the idea of it makes sense, except I wasn't dreaming about being in the 1800s.
Mhm.
So mm, was that really what happened to me? I don't know, but that's my story.
Yeah. And I mean, I think also the idea of it not just being in your imagination is the feeling that it evoked too. Like you said, it made you feel dreadful. So that's not something that would just pop up by a random image. It would be more of that like adrenaline fear rather than like disgusting dread.
Yeah, it was. I have never. I never remember feeling like that before, and I haven't felt that way since. So it was a really bizarre feeling, and I think that's one of the reasons why this has stayed with me so long. Is it really makes me wonder, what was this about,
Mhm.
um, and why did I feel that way?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even from like talking about this entity, this woman in particular, like even if it was almost a manifestation from the story that you were reading, it's still the idea of the feeling, the aura, like there's energy behind that. It's not just something that's like a random image. And so one of the things that I said to you before we started recording this is from a blue perspective, when we're talking about the chakras, that's all like your emotional energy center. So your blue chakra is your throat chakra, which is all about speaking your truth. And so for you as somebody who is more of a doer, a list person, like let's focus on these other things. And even more of that like futuristic side of things of like wanting to watch trailers to see what's coming. It's all about the preparation, the problem solver. Like I absolutely relate to you. It's instead of trying to go outside and lock the doors of your college people who might be destroying your yard or the person who might be backing in, like instead of asking in your dream, you're all about action. We got to go check, we got to go stop, we got to do something. So I would take it as like you've already sort of gotten your message of like be and with palms up too, like from a meditation perspective, palms up is all about being open to receive. So I'm open to receive this message of just being able to communicate and to talk, especially from a faceless person and a driverless car. These are things that are occurring where they have no communication. There's no way for them to speak. There's no way for anything to come through of a blank face. So only thing you're reading is body language. Only thing you're reading is energy aura. So rather than interpreting, which is what you're doing elsewhere, or assuming, making assumptions, then it's why are you here? What do you want? Anything like that. Actually being able to speak. So yeah, what do you think about that side of things?
That makes a lot of sense. Uh, I have done yoga in the past, and I do get the sense of, being open to things. I never put those two things together. Um, but it does make a lot of sense. And the idea that as a doer, um, being more receptive to stopping first and kind of asking the questions of what, why, where, when, instead of just immediately doing action, uh, it does make a lot of sense. I hadn't, obviously I don't have any kind of knowledge or anything, so I never would have put these things together. But hearing you say it, it does seem to make the whole experience now have a meaning instead of not just being something random that happened and I'm still waiting, you know? Yeah, I like that.
Mhm. I think also like it's not really a coincidence of watching the commercial for Black Phone too. Like you're literally in a situation where you're trapped and the only way out is to listen through the phone. So I'm sure that that had some more media influence on the dream itself, but I think that that's important nonetheless because even I don't have you watched the Black Phone?
Oh, no, no, not yet. Nope. Just haven't gotten the nerve up to watch it yet.
It's fantastic. But it's like all of these kids are so scary in the commercial, but like they're trying to help the main character. They're trying to help him. So again, with almost this like preconceived assumption of like, well, they're terrifying, so they must be evil. So yeah, it's a chance to change judgment too.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. And at some point, I'll get around to watching it. Although after seeing the trailer for Black Phone 2, that seems even worse than the original. So I'm not sure that I'm up for it.
Yeah. One day of bravery.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that that's really cool. And like, of course, I believe in ghosts. I believe in all that stuff, but I still like to look at it from a skeptical and logical perspective. What did we, especially in teaching dream interpretation, like what did you eat before you went to bed? What did you watch? What did you think of? How did you feel? Like anything that impacts your physical before you go to bed can impact your dream, of course. But so I think it's important to kind of take that into consideration, but I do think that there's enough of a pattern here to recognize like what the message at least is. And again, the fact that you were able to feel a feeling and see a physical entity, apparition, like that's not nothing, basically. So
Yeah, it's definitely changed my thought process on what happens, if there is another side of the veil. Because, like I said, it's something that's stuck with me vividly since then. So uh, I'm not saying I wish something else would happen to kind of reconfirm this, but I think I would be more open to it the next time, maybe.
yeah. And I mean, even before you go to bed, just I'm open to whatever messages or whoever wants to come through, as long as it's for my highest and best, or as long as it's for my protection. And that way you're not just, oh, whoever wants to show up can show up, and then you're sleep paralysis to your bed. Yeah. So, but
Yeah, I think that
yeah, I
that's the
used to
way
have,
horror movies start.
honestly, yeah, because let's play with the Ouija board because we want to see what's going to happen. Yeah. But yeah, I used to have a recurring dream of I and I too, like I love watching trailers. I love looking at everything that's more futuristic because I want to plan. I want to control. I want to be able to know what's coming. I like that predictability. That's my problem solver mentality. That's my list doer as well. But from a dream perspective, like you have prophetic dreams, but then you have normal dreams, and a lot of times they blend together because it's what might have already happened that you're dreaming about, but it's also influencing your own behaviors and emotions too. And so when I was in high school, I had this recurring dream every single night. And it was in the summer, so it was after school ended. So maybe let's call it for the whole month of June. And I was walking into this gas station, go into the bathroom of the gas station, and there's this also blonde woman crying at this sink and like runny makeup, kind of trashy gas station lady. And I just leave her alone, go to the stall, come out, washing my hands. And then she comes up behind me and she slits my throat. And I fall on the ground and I'm bleeding out. And she just walks out of the gas station. And every single night I had this dream, every night for, again, at least a month. So I was like, I don't know where this woman is or where I'm dying, but I hope I don't have to stop at any gas stations anytime soon. So now let's call it July. We always went to Hershey Park growing up. So we go to Hershey Park, me, my sister, my two cousins, and my mom. And then on our way home, we stop at this gas station. It is the gas station from my dream, like to a T, the gas station from my dream. And I start panicking because I'm like, am I going to die? Like, is today the day that I'm going to die? Because again, every single night I'm literally watching myself fall on the ground, just bleeding out. And so thankfully there was no blonde woman in there. There was nothing in the bathroom. Everything was fine. And after that, I never had that dream again. And so I just kind of chalked it up to the idea of like crazy imagination of what could happen at a gas station, like maybe something creepy. And then it wasn't until just a few months ago where I was doing a dream interpretation class. I said this as an example of like maybe it was a the prophetic dream that I was going to go to Hershey Park, or maybe it was subconscious that we've stopped at that gas station before. Like I can't rule those things out. So, but I was saying all of this to people, and the one person was like, maybe you were having a dream of something that had happened in that gas station. Like, have you ever looked into a woman who maybe like has stopped at gas stations before and lured people or murdered people, or like was someone killed in that bathroom? So I haven't looked into it because I've been too worried about that. Kind of the same thing. I'm like, I don't really, this is a situation where I'm like, maybe ignorance is bliss, but it has come back around to haunt my present nature of, I'm like, I want to know what this is all about. So,
It is horrifying.
mm,
Uh, and I almost wish that that person hadn't said that to you because it almost feels like you had peace and now it's resurfaced.
yeah, yeah. And I'm like, the more like adventurer side of me is like, maybe I should just go back to that gas station because like I know where it is. Maybe there's something there that I missed that now I can look at from a more logical perspective. I don't know. But of course, the more pragmatic side is don't do that. Don't be dumb.
Or go with a big group.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll do a paranormal investigation in the gas station of the in the bathroom of the gas station.
That would be kind of cool, actually.
Yeah,
You could
well,
live stream it too.
we could. Yeah.
Yep. And then you become a found footage movie.
Yeah, as my body is found on the ground of the bathroom. Yep, you got it. Sold to Hollywood.
Well, your estate would be worth millions.
Amazing. I'm thrilled. Cool. So yeah, anything else that like has your mind sort of changed on the idea of ghosts now, or have you been able to pay more attention to any of your other dreams that have come up?
It's funny you asked that second question because I am typically not someone who remembers their dreams. And that's still the case. So there are a lot of nights where I don't know if I've dreamt, uh, and if I have, it wasn't memorable enough to keep, to recall in the morning. The only ones I do recall are the ones where I'm physically active, uh, and I actually move, and I, will hit something, and it'll wake me up. Or there's a scene in the dream where I am emotionally at a point where I say something and it's usually loud, or I'm laughing and I wake myself up, and I wake myself up laughing, or I can wake myself up yelling something. Uh, and so outside of that, from a dream perspective, no. As far as your first question, yeah, I would say that the dream itself, I think, was a turning point for me being able to at least accept the idea that there is something else. Um, and I start to look at this from the eyes of people who create the horror movies and write horror stories. Um, and I wonder if there's some leakage into their thought process from somewhere else that's helping to tell that story. Maybe it's not a true story, but the idea of it, because it just seems so. Some of it seems so real and so possible that it doesn't seem like it's that far out of left field. I mean, when you think about stories that happened back in the 1800s, like Jules Verne, and going to the moon, and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and people thought, wow, that's really crazy, and but now we do it. Maybe these are the beginnings of predictions that at some point, 100 years from now, what's happening is normal.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
So
there's a movie called Arrival, and that's more about like humans connecting with aliens, but it's more of like a parallel time line, basically. So it's like we're communicating with something that already is us. So it's very interesting to think about that it's science fiction, but even from your background too of science, like the bridge between very advanced magic and even law of attraction manifesting, like people who literally heal themselves from cancer. Like that's very close to studies of science and even just the placebo effect and everything like that. So there's a lot there that has legs for sure.
yeah, and a lot that we don't understand.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm someone that loves to read about quantum theory, and I'm not going to pretend I understand it, and I certainly couldn't do the math. But the idea that there are multiple dimensions and a multiverse, or we are a bubble and there's millions of bubbles, it who knows? It could be. It would be interesting.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. As much as I'm a believer of metaphysical and spiritual, I am also a conspiracy theorist. So, those lines, those lines blend a lot more than you think. Especially
Yes.
lately. Yeah.
Yes, they do.
Awesome. Any sort of final thoughts? Anything else that you want to share with everybody?
I guess my yeah, I guess my main takeaway would be that if there's something like this that does happen to you, um, certainly don't keep it to yourself. Talk to somebody, find somebody like yourself who can help, piece together and maybe help you understand the meaning behind it, um, and be open to it. Accept the fact that it's happened, and be open to the fact that it happened to you, and don't shy away from it in the future. Keep your eyes open and look for other opportunities for it to happen.
I love that. Yeah. And biggest thing is like pay attention. Pay attention to the signs, the patterns, anything that feels off. You know, you go to bed and you're like, I just don't feel right. All right, what might be going on here? Yeah.
Mhm.
Start asking some of those questions. But yeah, if people tell you that you're crazy, you're just around the wrong people.
That's why I joined Shivers.
Join the circus. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
it. Cool. Thank you so much, David. Appreciate having you. And thanks everybody for listening for our fun story time this week.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.